And the question is, well, what do you do in the face of something that's intolerable? And the answer is, well, you try to find something that justifies it, right? You want to have something that gets you the hell out of bed in the morning. And not just any old morning, but a morning when your father has Alzheimer's disease and your daughter has an incurable illness. Because you need something to get out of bed for in those mornings too. And that better be the purpose that you found in life. And if the purpose is going to be such that it gets you out of bed in those mornings, it better be a pretty damn noble purpose, because otherwise why would you bother? Okay, so you have to do something. Otherwise the consequences are dire. To do something you have to value something. It's a definitional issue. Because to do something is to act out the proposition that the thing you're doing, the thing you're aiming at, let's say, is preferable to the thing you have. And preferable means you'll do it. So those things are tied together so tightly you can't disentangle them. If you say, I'm aiming at X, but I don't value it, then there's something wrong with the way that you're conceptualizing the statement. Because to aim at something and to work to bring it into existence is the same as valuing it. And if you say, well, I don't value it, then something's out of kilter. Either you're acting out a falsehood, or you don't know what you're talking about. It's one of those two things. And you meet people like that who are deeply confused. Their action patterns and their verbal self-representation don't mesh. But that doesn't mean that they're critics of value. It just means that they're deeply confused. So you have to act or you suffer. In order to act, you have to have a value structure, because to act you have to value one thing more than another, which means that you have to inhabit a structure of value. You have to. Okay, so you need a structure of value because it's the antidote to catastrophe. The oldest story we have is something like, order is susceptible to disruption by chaos, and the fundamental demand that's made on the human being is to contend with the chaos that disrupts order. Not to live in order and not to live in chaos, but to be able to contend with the chaos that disrupts order. And so when you encourage your children, for example, what you're doing is encouraging them to become the masters of the chaos that can disrupt order, rather than denizens of order, which makes them tyrants, or denizens of chaos, which makes them nihilistic and hopeless. So you train your children, you encourage your children and yourself and your partner, if you have any sense, to be a master of emergent chaos and to be able to contend with that. And so chaos is potential, and it's this disruptive, it's the capacity of the infinite world to disrupt your finite considerations. That's another way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is it's the serpent in the Garden of Eden. And the reason that that story is set up the way it is because it's trying to represent that. There's no place that's so bounded and secure, even if it's set up by God himself, that doesn't have an agent of chaos inside it. It's exactly the same idea that the Taoists put forward with their symbolic representation. It's just portrayed in a different manner. And the question is, well, what do you do in the garden given that there's a snake in it? And the answer to that is something like, you become the master of snakes. And that's a deep idea. That's the same idea as confronting the dragon and getting the treasure. That's the same idea as going to the bottom of the ocean and rescuing your father from the belly of the whale. It's the same idea. And that's an element in the greatest of stories, and the greatest of stories is the heroic story. And the heroic story is to voluntarily confront the unknown when it manifests itself, and to gather something of value as a consequence, and to share it with the community. There isn't a story that's more emblematic of what it means to be human than that. That is us. That's our best bet. The fundamental reality of life is the path you take through life. It's not a materialist idea. It's a different kind of idea. It's the idea that life is a journey. Well, we're mobile creatures and we're on a journey, and the best way to conceptualize reality is as the place that you journey through. And the question is, well, what are the elements, what are the constituent elements of the place that you journey through? What life is essentially is not a place to attain happiness or even to aim for happiness, even though you should be grateful if some comes along now and then, but a call to something like adventure. And I think that's the proper way of conceptualizing it. Certainly, if you go watch a story, a movie, you read a book, something like that, if you encounter a narrative that's gripping, whether it's a romance or a classic adventure story, then the element of it that's gripping is the adventure. And so to portray life as an adventure in romance and in the world is the proper way to portray it. And the way that you facilitate the adventure is through encouragement. I had a client once, I really liked him. He was a good guy, he was a smart guy, good looking young guy, had everything going for him, you know. He was a good musician, he was a talented athlete, but he hadn't been encouraged, I wouldn't say. He told me about his relationship with his girlfriend. He said his girlfriend wanted to go biking around southern Ontario. She was about 19 or 20, and he thought he might join her. And when she went and talked to her parents, they made every provision possible to help her prepare for the journey, to make sure her bike was in good shape, to make sure she had the right equipment, to help her plot out a route. And when he went and talked to his parents, all they did was worry that he was going to get hurt. And like, he might get hurt, because people get hurt. But they didn't understand that they were choosing between the hurt that he might encounter by going out in the world and having an adventure, let's say with his girlfriend, or the hurt that he would encounter by staying at home, cowering in his basement under the protection of his over-loving parents, while his girlfriend ventured bravely into the world. You think, well, which of those two things is most likely to be damaging? And the answer to that is, well, his parents wouldn't worry as much as if he was in the basement. And that's the wrong worry even, because they should worry more, not less. And there isn't just you right now, there's you now and tomorrow and next week and a year from now and 5 years from now, so you have to plan across all those stretches of time. And there isn't just you now and the future you, there's you plus your family and your community, and so all of that has to be taken into account while you're plotting your movement forward. It's very, very complicated. You have all these problems to solve simultaneously, and your motivational systems, anger, hunger, and so forth, can help you solve one of those problems now, but not all of them permanently. That requires higher cognitive function, and that's part of what drove the evolution of our complex cognitive systems. That's how do you propagate the game across time in a complex environment. The left hemisphere operates when what you're doing works. And so a lot of what you do during your life is to keep your right hemisphere off. People don't like it going on accidentally. It's the home of negative emotion. It's the home of pain and anxiety. It's the thing that turns on and freezes you in your tracks when something that you deeply did not expect happens. And it prepares you to deal with the onslaught of what you didn't expect. Now, it's not all bad news, because to use the right hemisphere in a judicious manner is also something that adds intrigue and interest and artistic expression and all sorts of positive things to your life. So, because potential is not only negative, it's also positive, it can be dealt with in ways that are deeply enriching and meaningful.